Hello, Keri.
Hello,
Hello.
Alexandra. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. And I'm speaking with Keri Burnor, ex-Catholic nun who became a real whistleblower with stuff that are unbelievable for many of us. And she will also talk about her story. Um, and I would like to say just that Keri has done great interviews with Kerry Cassidy on Project Camelot, a couple of interviews that you can watch, and also with NG and Jim on Victorious Libertas, 4 videos that I will maybe refer to. So they are very, very worth watching, maybe even before our talk today. But please, Keri, could you introduce yourself a little bit and talk about yourself?
Absolutely. And thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing to restrain evil. So basically, my story goes back. It's basically a story where I've converted to the Roman Catholic Church. I became a nun at very early age. I was very attracted to the Roman Catholic Church. And at 15, 16 years old, I joined the Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults, became a Catholic in high school in my senior year. And after my senior year, about a month or two later, after I graduated high school, I went straight into the convent. Now, the thing is, I grew up being like kind of Protestant, but not really raised in any faith. It was more like we could believe what we wanted to believe. My mother was very open-minded and she didn't have much of a foundation. So I was attracted to the Roman Catholic Church. I became a nun because that's what I thought logically one would do if they were in love with Christ. And I had a beautiful interaction when I was 9 years old with Christ himself, when my mom said, "You're going to be in big trouble. You need to go to your room and pray." And I went to my bedroom and I'm like, okay, I'm going to pray. But the problem is if I pray to Buddha, Jesus is going to get mad. If I pray to Jesus, Vishnu is going to get mad. If I pray to Vishnu, so I'm like, I'm not going to pray because I don't know who's who. I don't know who is God. So I said, whoever you are, I need you to reveal who you are to me. And sure enough, I had this experience where I was 9 years old, and it was whether in the body or out of the body, in sleep or out of sleep, or between consciousness, who knows? I don't know. All I know was it was tremendous. I was at the location where Jesus was before his crucifixion, and he was chained to a floor, and he was going to be crucified the following day. And I knew I had to get him out of that room and rescue him. So I said, "You're going to be crucified tomorrow. I need to rescue you. You need to leave. I'm going to take you out of here." And he smiled at me, and he assured me that this was exactly the way it was supposed to be. So I thought to myself, all right. But I went to grab his leg, and he was wearing a long white robe, and the robe was luminous. It had light coming out of it. So when I went to touch his leg, I was like, oh my God, this is God. God answered my prayer. So he told me in his way, he showed me who he was. And this is what set the course when I was 9 years old for me to want to become a nun. So I was like, well, whoever that is, I want to marry that man. So years later, I saw movies about nuns and how they took vows, and they took vows with wearing a bridal gown, and they would, take a ring and wear the ring as married to Jesus, like a bride of Christ. So I thought, as I was growing up, I'm like, I think I have to become a nun because I think that's how you're supposed to marry God. So at this stage, I'm in high school, and I ended up talking to a priest friend of mine after I became Catholic that year, and he called up Mother Teresa Benaway in Still River, Massachusetts, and Mother Teresa was also a convert to Roman Catholicism, and she said, bring her down, you know, come and we'll do a trial period. If we like her, we'll keep her. If we don't, we have 2 weeks and we'll get rid of her. But they kept me. After 2 weeks, I was their pet favorite nun, the nun wannabe, the kid, you know, I was the kid. I was, you know, 17 years old. And so at that point, we managed a farm. We did organic gardening, and I gained like probably 10 pounds the first month I was there. It was delicious. All the food was excellent. And so as the years went on, see, in the Catholic Church, you're not allowed to become a nun officially until you wait for 2 years, because the Catholic Church doesn't want you to become a nun during the honeymoon stage. And so you have to wait 2 years so you can make a determination if that is in fact your calling. So I found a loophole in the canon law. And I said, wait a minute, Mother Teresa, it says right here that I'm allowed to become an affiliate of the order. I don't take vows, but I take promises. And she said, kid, we'll set it up. We'll get a priest for you. We'll have you take your promises. So I became an oblate or an associate of the community right away, as soon as I could. And then I spent some time going back and forth to college. I finished college 2.5 years later. I went to Magdalen College in Warner, New Hampshire, very strict but beautiful college. And we had all of I was the lead, I was the head, like chant schola. So we would sing Gregorian chant, and it was my favorite music of all time. Like somehow, I don't know why, but I was attracted to it. So they put me in charge of that at the choir, and I loved it. And then we had another choir master that did the other music that was more of like the polyphony and the beautiful, beautiful hymns that we would sing. So I went through the college and I finished, and I had a beautiful experience, standing ovation when I gave my thesis. And the president, I got an A+, and my thesis was tremendous. It was comparing Western perspective art with Chinese art. And so I got through that and went right back to the convent, and I became a novice at the time. And I was there for two and a half more years at that stage. So of course, just so you know, this was many years ago. This was back in 1993. So if people want to know more detail, you can go to www.clergyvictim.com, Transforming Victims into Victors. And we finally have the book available, Divine Challenge. And this book covers the story in more detail from my birth up until the year of 2008. So you're welcome to go to the website. It's for free by PDF download until the 18th of this month, January. But after that, if you want the hard copy, email us and we'll send you the link on how to purchase that. So anyways, I then had an unbelievable experience with Jesus again. And this was the time when I was in, as a novice, we had to go through formation and stages of training with the superiors. And I was doing excellent. I was very happy. I was doing, you know, like the farm work very well, which I enjoyed. And then all of a sudden, I ended up going through another mystical experience. And it was, I had an encounter with Christ, but he was on a judgment seat of sorts. It wasn't regarding my salvation, but there was something wrong. And he was very luminous, like light was coming out of him, but this time he was not happy with me. And I'm like, what is going on? What's going on? So I prostrated myself on the floor in this, I don't even know, it was a beautiful place. And he had a flag. It was like a white flag with a red cross, and he is not happy at all. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, you have a calling to become closer to me. I said, wait a minute, I'm serving you. I'm living in the convent. I'm a nun. You know, And he says, you have a calling to draw closer to me in a more contemplative lifestyle. And so at this point, I'm like, well, all this time I did feel drawing to that, but I thought it was a temptation. I thought I was supposed to just do what's in front of me and focus on my community where I was. And so at this point, I said, just give me a chance and show me what I need to do. So I came out of that experience and I ran to my Mother Superior's office, Mother Teresa Benaway. And I love her because she never forced me to do anything. She always tried to understand me first. And Mother, I told her what happened, and she said, let's pray. Take an hour a day extra in the chapel and pray every single day for a whole year. And after the year is over, also pray for other things too. We'll come back and we'll sit down, we'll talk and see if you have a calling to become like a hermit nun, or a contemplative nun. So after the year I prayed, I went back and I told Mother, I said, Mother, I feel like I have to leave and I don't want to because this is my home and I'm loved here. And so Mother said, if it's the calling of God, you need to pay attention to that, but I will not kick you out. I'm your Mother Superior. And I said, I'm not leaving until I have your blessing. She says, well, I don't want you to go. and Sister Mary Michael was the novice mistress, and she and we were sick, like for a week. We were sick to our stomachs because I didn't want to leave, but I only wanted to go if I had the blessing. So shortly thereafter, Mother, said, listen, I give you my blessing. You need to pursue this. You need to follow through with it. And if you don't want to do it, you can come back. This is your home. You don't have to leave. We're not kicking you out. So I love this Mother. She actually did not let anybody sleep in my bed. She kept my room the way it was. And if I wanted to go back home to sleep, the bed was right there for me. Everything was the way it was in my room. She kept it as my room for a while. So at this stage I left, and in order to become a hermit in the Catholic Church, you have to get firm footing in the world, which means when I went into the convent, I had no life experience. I never wrote a check. I didn't know how to drive a car. I knew nothing. So, except for how to maybe drive like the tractor equipment on the farm. So at this point, within 2 weeks, I got my driver's license. My uncle allowed me to stay at his place, my uncle and my aunt, and I got insurance. I got a job because the people in my church were very open and very helpful to me because they had connections. They were the boss of their own companies. So they said, come on and work for us. So I worked with them and started to get a firm footing. And I prayed when I was living at my Auntie Donna's house and my Uncle Kevin. They lived, I would say, less than 5 to 7 minutes away from a monastery. And I was excited because every day I was going to Mass. And I never missed Mass in 10 years. Like, I was very Catholic. So at that point, I went to the monastery and I would just do the work that I needed to do to pay my bills, to pay the insurance, to move out, to get an apartment, to become responsible, and to learn how to navigate the world. So at that point, I was able to go to the Mass at St. Joseph's Abbey in Spencer, Massachusetts, and I would spend several hours during the day when I was not working, or even when I was working. I would work maybe 4 hours, then go back to the Abbey for more prayer, because they prayed 7 times a day. And the chapel would open up at 2:30 in the morning, would close at 8 p.m. for Compline, which is night prayers. So any chance I got, I was always up there in the side chapel praying, to become close to God. And I felt his presence in a powerful way there. So after approximately 8 months, I didn't talk to anybody. I was very reserved. I was very respectful of the monks. I didn't want to be any distraction to their prayer. And so a friend of mine, Kathy, asked me, well, will you come up with me to the ladies' room? And I walked her up to the ladies' room because it's separate from the chapel. They didn't have bathrooms close to the church. So I walked with Kathy up to the guest house, and Brother Philippe opened the door. I didn't know who he was. And he laughed, and he was so fun, and he was so loving. And he greeted Kathy because they knew each other. And then he was asking about me. So I sat down and I talked with him because I was invited to. And Kathy and I and Brother Philippe talked about the spiritual life. And Brother Philippe then said, well, I've got to get another monk here because this monk is going to love you. And his name was Brother Patrick. So Brother Patrick and I and Brother Philippe and Kathy sat down, and I shared some of my writings in my journal and my poetry and things like that. And the monks were crying, and they were like, we've been here for over 30 years and we've never looked at the chapel the way that you see it. And it's beautiful. I mean, the church at the Abbey it's beautiful. Okay. It's stunning. It's Romanesque architecture, and it's ancient, but yet it's new. There's a flavor of both ancient and new mixed together. So at this point, I developed a friendship with the monks at the monastery, mostly Brother Philippe and Brother Patrick. And then over time, over a period of, 2.5, 3 years or whatever, there were several monks that just became my friend and supported me in my aspiration to become a nun and to become a hermit specifically. Because in the Catholic Church, if you become a hermit, it's under the bishop of the diocese, which in this case was Worcester. And then you adopt a spirituality and you get tutelage by a priest of that spirituality. So if I chose being a Franciscan priest would have to instruct me. If I chose to become Benedictine, so forth. This was Cistercian. So I had to get the training of a Cistercian monk. So one time I went into confession, and there was a priest who absolutely was very warm and cordial. His name was Father Raphael Simon. And he said, you have a very powerful calling on your life. He said, I would love to support you with that. So he basically said, let me see if I can ask the abbot to be your spiritual advisor. And I said, well, this is great. Please do ask. So the abbot basically said, I'll give you permission to talk with her, and see if you two will be a good match for each other. So I was excited. I was like, wow, okay. So Father Raphael asked me to write my story because he was a psychiatrist, and he had to determine if I was mentally healthy or not in order to pursue the life of a hermit. So it was because of Father Raphael that I wrote this book, and it was called Vita Mea, which means my life. But the first 50 pages of this was written in the year 2000 because Father Raphael asked me to write it. So it was his inspiration that created this book in the first place. And so I wrote the 50 pages of my life at that time. It's now probably almost 350 pages. And this story Divine Challenge only covers up to the year 2008. The second Divine Challenge is in the works. So I'm still working on it. And that's more elaborate. But this book covers up to the year 2008. So basically at this point, the abbot and Father Raphael agree that I can meet another time and get together. And Father loved my story. He said, you've been through unbelievable pain in your childhood, but you're okay. Like, you really did heal a lot because of God's love. So then at this point, Father Raphael asked me very deep theological questions, and I passed the test. He asked me questions, and I replied to those answers. I answered his questions. And he said, this is great. You passed the test. Let's see if the abbot will let us work together, because you deserve a calling of a good spiritual director. So he went back to the abbot, and the abbot said, no, you can't meet with her. Father Raphael calls me to talk to him, and I go to the guest house and we sit down and talk, and he said, I don't know why, but the abbot, doesn't want me to meet with you anymore. And I'm like, what? I said, I spent 3 months or several months doing all these tasks. You say I'm not nuts. You're a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever he was. You say I'm okay, so what's the problem? I don't get it. And you even said my theology was on point. So I don't know why is this happening? And he said, if the abbot said it, it's the will of God, so we can't fight that. And I said, you're right. I'll just take that's God's will for me. So I went and I wrote in my journal about it. I was so upset. I was so mad. So I let it go. And a couple of months after that, I went to the gift shop on the Abbey's property, and they were selling like CD chants, a Gregorian chant, or incense or something. I went in there in the shop to buy something, and Father Aquinas and Father Isaac were at the cash register, and they both were very friendly to me, and they said, how are you? And I burst out into tears, and I said, I'm not good at all, because I didn't expect them to ask. So I said, I feel like I was dropped off a cliff, and I don't know why this is happening to me. And Father Aquinas was so loving, and he said, that's the dark night of the soul. And that's normal. This is a process that people go through when they're very spiritual. And I said, well, it doesn't feel good at all. And he said, you're going to get through it. Everything's going to be okay. And then Father Isaac said, well, what's the matter? And I said, well, I went to Father Raphael Simon. I did everything he asked me to do. And I don't know why the abbot won't allow him to be my spiritual advisor when I never asked. He volunteered to me to help me. So Father Isaac said, well, let's get together. Let's talk tonight. My schedule is open tonight at 7 p.m. So I went back to the Abbey, talked to Father Isaac, and Father Isaac said, everything you're doing is reasonable. Just sit down and write a proposal. Write this thing called the propositum, and let's see if I can be of more help to you. And I said, well, that's great. Maybe the abbot's just misunderstanding me. And so he said, well, I'm happy to communicate to the abbot for you. So I was really happy. So then the abbot allows Father Isaac to meet with me a few times. And Father Isaac was happy to announce that he had the permission of the abbot to send me to his friend, Father Dennis O'Brien, who was a parish priest and understood the world, but he also spent many years in the monastery, so he understands both sides. And as a hermit, I have to do both sides. I have to be in the world, but not, and spiritually not in the world, but not. You have to be acclimated. So I worked with Father Dennis for about 2 years, and then things started getting strange. Of course, at this point, monks were very supportive of me, many of them. There were some monks who were not supportive, and I didn't know why, because I was following all the rules to the best of my ability. So at this point, a monk walked up to me and says, here's all the books, read them. And it's all the books that the novices read. So I finished reading the books. And then I was invited to a profession of a monk, Brother Adam. His profession is final solemn vows, and I was invited to come in. So I went in to celebrate, and a priest was walking by me in the hallway, and I wanted to talk with him because his book was about the contemplative experience, and I was eating every book. I was reading them all, and I wanted to talk with him to see if he would speak with me, because I was on retreat. And Father Joseph said, well, of course I'll talk with you. If you're on retreat this week, I'm going to be the retreat priest. I'm going to be the master that's on the retreat master, and we're going to be talking about my book. And I said, well, that's perfect. I would love to talk to you. He said, okay. He says, Thursday we'll get together. Now, this was in the year of 2001. August 23rd, 2001. Keep in mind, I was going to the monastery for about 2.5 years or so. It's in the book. I have bad chronology memories. So go to the book for all the information. And so at this point, Father asked me to go get the Bible. And it's this big, huge white Bible. And I put it on the table. And he asked me to read from the Song of Songs, or the Canticle of Canticles, chapter 1, verse 12. And he's talking about the bundle of myrrh. Like the bundle of myrrh is like the lover is like the bundle of myrrh between the breasts of the beloved, you know, in the story, in this poetic love story. And so I'm reading this, and I'm okay. I mean, it's okay. There's nothing weird happening yet. But then the priest, Father Joseph Ducon, starts talking about women's breasts, and on and on and on about women's breasts. And I'm like, all right, this guy's got a thing with breasts, but who am I to judge, you know? Then he tells me, in order for me to continue to meet with you, because the abbot gave him permission to continue to meet with me, I was kind of going to graduate from Father Dennis O'Brien to an in-house monk at the monastery now. And so this is something that, you know, I was open-minded to. So Father Joseph then says, listen, I need you to be in agreement with me that you'll be trained as a nun, and we'll have you join the convent in Wrentham, Massachusetts. And I said, wait a minute. I'm being trained for the past 2 years on how to become a hermit nun under Canon 603, and now you want me to change? I don't understand why. And I said, am I doing something wrong? He said, no, 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 no. He says, there's monks here at the monastery who are attracted to you, and they're having a problem because you're here. And I'm like, I'm not talking to monks. The monks, if they come to talk to me, I'll be cordial, but I'm not pursuing them. So I said to the priest, I said, Father, I'm open. I'll pray about it, but it's really disturbing because I don't understand why we're changing our minds here. I'm in formation to become a hermit, not a nun in the community. So I said, I'll be open to that. He says, yeah, so there's a monk that was attracted to me. And I said, well, I don't like any monks here. I'm not like that. I'm here for Jesus, only for Jesus. So at this point, I go to pick up my books, and Father lunges out and grabs my left breast, and it was fast. So I'm like, what's going on here? And now I'm in shock because I'm not wired that way. I was not focused that way. So I couldn't understand what was going on. And what was happening was, I found out that night, Brother Philippe was back on duty as the porter, the man in charge of helping the retreatants. And so I talked to Brother Philippe, and Brother Philippe and I stayed up till 3 in the morning, and we talked about the whole situation. And he said, I believe you, but I understand, he says, I understand that they were setting you up for a long time, and they're going to try to get rid of you because you know too many things. And I said, Brother Philippe, I know nothing. I don't know anything. He says, you don't understand. You come here to pursue holiness. You pursue God. You want God. But there's monks here that have other agendas. I said, that doesn't make any sense. I didn't believe it's possible that there could be monks there that were not there for God. I was too naive. I was in my 20s. So at that point, the following day, Brother Philippe has me speak with Brother Patrick. And Brother Patrick and I and Brother Philippe agreed that I won't say a word officially, because Brother Philippe said, if you say something, you're going to be, it's going to be very bad for you. Bad things are going to happen to me. And I said, that sounds like a threat. I said, but I don't want to be kicked out of here. I love God. I love this place. I'll just forgive and move on. 2 months later, I go to a convent. Now, my situation's nothing compared to what happened to other people, okay? And I found out years later. I go to the convent in Petersham and speak with Sister Maria Malouf. And Sister, I tell her my story, and she says, this thing happened to my friend about 10 years ago by the same priest. And I was so angry, I punched the table, like hard. And I said, oh no, everything I ever wanted, my whole career is gone. And all of everything I desired that I fought for is gone. And now I have to do something about this because nobody else will do anything. I was so mad. So at this point, the nun agreed with me that we'll try to settle this in-house. And Father Raphael Simon would say Mass. So he would drive from St. Joseph's Abbey in Spencer to the convent and say Mass there. So I agreed that the nun could talk to my friend monk, and maybe the friend monk will talk to Father Joseph and tell him to stop it and not let him work with women. See if the priest will admit to this and not work with women. First, Father Joseph denies it. The second time he says, I'll do better next time. I said, that's not good enough. So then I went to a priest, another priest, Father Peter Joyce. I was cleaning churches at the time, and I told him, and Father Peter went with me to a meeting to the Abbey to try to resolve this in-house. And the meeting became ugly and threatening. And Father Isaac, who headed the investigation at the Abbey, he was the second man in charge. He turned the whole tables against me and tried to destroy my credibility. And it was horrible. So Father Peter Joyce called the district attorney's office in Worcester. And at that point, it was out of our hands. They made a court case. So the court case was developed. We went to trial very quickly in 2003, March 13th. You might know more about those numbers than I do. I don't know anything about that stuff. So I went to the trial, and the case was botched, and I lost. So I came fighting in the newspapers afterwards, and I won in the court of public opinion. And then I became an advocate and helped other victims of clergy abuse. And then I found out over a 7-year period, I was fighting in Massachusetts for other victims, survivors. And then I realized, wait a minute, this isn't just sexual abuse. And many, many other victims were coming to me who were victims of other priests at the Abbey. And on top of it, monks from St. Joseph's Abbey were telling me that they were also victims. So now I'm like, what's going on? Is this a sex ring? You know, I couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it was even possible. So then I tried to go to a civil suit to win in court for civil damages. The attorneys would take my case, then the following day, they would write me a letter. Here's your money back. I can't work with you. And I'm like, why? I don't understand. So basically, there was another victim, and all of these things, all of these accounts kept building and building and building. And I was fighting at the State House in Boston to change the statute of limitations rules. And the attorneys were walking up to me, you know, asking me to be a consultant to help them, other victims, with their victims of other priests at the Abbey. And the Abbey was covering it up and continuing to keep these criminals there. And I would help them, and they would settle their cases because nobody wanted to go to the public courts because my case was botched in order to stop others from coming forward. And that's what happened. So then in 2007, I believe it was, that's when the truth, I was studying every day. I was trying to understand, why couldn't I get a remedy? I didn't even want money. I just wanted the priest to not work with women, you know? So why would they not do the right thing? I tried to figure that out. It was illogical for me. Then I started to, people like Leo Zagami would call me And I learned more. He gave me a ton of information about the Jesuits and how they took over in the United States. And I started to study the Vatican politics involved in Massachusetts politics, and how all of this goes back to the 1950s, 60s, and 70s with the rat lines and the child sacrifice and the trafficking and the murdering. And I joined Survivors Network for those abused by priests, and heard horrible stories of death, like kids being killed because the bishops were afraid that the kids were going to rat them out. And now I'm like, what is going on? So I called Greg Szymanski and I said, Greg, I read this article about Alperin versus Vatican Bank, and there's a case about the Serbian genocide with pictures that are declassified showing Franciscan priests involved in running Camp Jasenovac, and these Catholic priests were sawing off the heads of Orthodox Christian priests. And I'm like, what is this? Is this fake? Greg Szymanski said, no, I will put you on the phone with attorney barrister Jonathan Levy. Jonathan Levy and I talked. I was sick to my stomach. He said, sister, this is the truth. I'm representing the victims of genocide, and I forced the Vatican to open the bank books open, proving that the gold from the teeth of the people who were killed in the camps, made its way all the way up into the Vatican vaults, and that the rat lines and all the plunder. And I was like, what is going on here? So then I studied for 3 years straight, because I didn't know who Jesus was anymore after that. After learning the truth, I was studying the Almanac of Evil by Franco Collins. I was studying the deep, dark arts, Gnosticism, the Essenes, and then I was studying Orthodox Christianity. And I had a Hebrew expert, a Greek expert, and I would call this monk up and talk to him till 3 in the morning and get the truth. And I studied the movie Zeitgeist and got more truth, and found out how that was paid for and endorsed by Hillary and Bill Clinton, and how that was set up to destroy the faith of Christians. This is what I understood at the time. And then how the Gnostica Ecclesia is actually controlled and run by the Vatican. And of course, Leo Zagami told me all about that. And so Leo asked me to help him with a bunch of projects. So I helped him out. I jumped right in to help him until they took his child and threatened to take his kid away from him forever. And then Leo had to, pretend he was nuts in order to make it out alive. So I couldn't work with him because the program changed. The Committee of Hope, the Tour of Hope changed. So respectfully, I said, we'll put the project on hold for now. In the meantime, I left the Roman Catholic Church, and in 2008, I converted to the Orthodox faith, which is completely different. Obviously, if the Roman Church is trying to kill them off, and then you study people like Eric John Phelps and Vatican assassins proving that the Bolshevik Revolution is nothing more than the Jesuits taking over and killing off all the Russians for the purposes of not having any standing armies against the papacy, now the picture starts getting bigger and bigger, more and more clear. So at this stage in the game, 2008, 2007, October 17, 2007, I went on Greg's show and I spilled the beans and I named names and I got into the Masonic side of all of this. And then other people came on from my group where I worked with them. Mary T. Jean of the Worcester Voice, who supported clergy victims, she came on and divulged the truth. And at that stage, that's when the Diocese of Worcester called me within less than 2 days and said, can we sit down and talk about this? We need to talk to you. And I said, I will call you when I'm ready to talk to you, because I knew I had to give my resignation. Like, I'm done. I don't want to be a Catholic anymore. I don't want to be a Roman Catholic nun, because for me, it's the same as wearing an SS uniform. I took off my habit and never put it on, because I realized for me, when I got to know the truth, I couldn't do it. Other people who don't know the truth, I don't judge them. You know, there's other nuns out there that are good people. But for me, I had to walk away. So in 2008, I was burnt out. I kept helping a lot of these victims, survivors, and the stories got worse and worse and worse. And the diocesan official gave me clues and told me I was being followed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This was after the trial with the Abbey. I had newspapers telling me, reporters, one of which, David Dorr from Spencer New Leader, he called me and said, "Did you call anybody within 20 minutes of us talking?" And I said, "No, I had to wait for an hour and a half to tell everybody that I'm going to have you over to do the news story with me." He said, "I'm really concerned. My life was threatened for taking your story." He said, "Do you have a cell phone?" I said, "No, I have just a regular phone." He says, "Don't talk on that phone. Your phone is tapped." So now I'm like, what the heck is going on? I'm just a nun. I'm just trying to help other victim survivors. You know, it's crazy. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I now know I'm in over my head. And now I feel like this is dangerous and I've got to get out of Massachusetts. So, and take a break from all this. I was burnt out, you know. So I went to Texas and renewed my love for Christ and spiritually, you know, aligned myself more to focusing on prayer. And then I engaged in special studies. So this was 2009, January, up until 2015, I was heavily involved, I think somewhere about there anyway. And I started to study about different remedies. And a whole bunch of people wanted me to use their cases as guinea pigs. And I said, I'm just learning. I don't know anything. I'm just learning. So if you want to give me your case, you know, let's see if it'll work. Well, sure enough, I got people out of prison, out of jail, out of debt, and the remedies were working. And it was great. And I was becoming popular and people wanted me to help them with their cases. So I did the best I could to help as many people as possible. And once I tested the technology that I was using, others just wanted to donate. They're like, we're going to donate to you monthly so you can continue your studies to stay abreast of the new, you know, evolving technologies on these lawful remedies. Well, I got so interested into that I was holding seminars. And in 2012, I received a phone call from the FBI. And they asked me, first they said, well, hi, is this Keri Burnor? I said, who is this? And they said, oh, this is Agent so-and-so with the FBI. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. You know, I was expecting a phone call from FedEx because I bought a painting for a friend and I wanted to award him the painting at the seminar. And of course, I was sitting in the bathroom, and if I stood up, the toilet was gonna flush. So I'm like, no, but I had to get my microphone. I had to get my recorder because everywhere I go, I always have a recorder. So I went to go to get my briefcase and the toilet flushed. So I started laughing and I was like, I'm sorry. Now you know. I said, now you know where my office is. I said, how can I help you? And they said, well, we want to talk to you about some other man, some other fellow. And I said, okay, is Keri Burnor under any form of investigation? No, 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 no. They said no. So I said, okay, great. Well, let's go ahead and meet at 2 o'clock in the conference room called the Mercury Room. So they agreed. So they come by and they sit down and talk with me for about an hour. And very nice. They were very nice. They didn't flash a badge in my face. They were very respectful. You know, they introduced themselves, and it was a private capacity. This was a private meeting. Very nice and very friendly. And so I didn't understand what they wanted, though. I was confused. And so one of them asked me, do you believe the Pope owns us all through the collateralization of our birth certificates? And I'm like, I'm not going to answer that. I didn't answer that. I just went on to another topic. And then they started to talk about the Emergency Banking Relief Act of 1933. And I didn't talk about that either. I just said, basically, if you want to come to my class, you can come and I'll treat you like everybody else, but you have to sign the non-disclosure like everybody else, because I'm not going to hide. I'll tell you the whole truth. So come to my conference, come to my seminar, you know? But they were very friendly. Well, 2 years after that meeting, I found out through someone who was my security. I ended up hiring security at the time, and they had a clearance. So they were able to sit down and talk to someone in the FBI and find out, well, wow, she knows a lot. She knows her stuff. It says in the file. And the FBI was looking to talk to me because they wanted to hire me as a CHS or a CI, whatever they call it. So I was like, well, that's cool, you know, but of course I was not interested. I don't know, you know, why are they asking me about the Pope, you know, the FBI, you know? So you probably already know the answer to that. And I know years later, I figured it out. It takes me some time to figure things out. So at this point, I had a surgery back in 2011.
Excuse me, I'm interrupting you. They wanted you to shut you up this way, that they would give you a job and then you would sign that. Isn't it so?
Yes, and I heard also that the good people in the FBI wouldn't want this to happen to me, but the bad people had a plan. You know, the deep state or whatever you want to call it. I don't know the terminology. I'm not an intelligence operative. I just try to be close to God. But basically what came down to me later, I think it was the year of 2016 or 17, early 2000, somebody in the government said, oh yeah, the FBI was planning to have you come in and die on duty.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, you know, I don't know what's true or not, but I certainly wouldn't put it past them. They're certainly, you know, that's how some of them operate. So
Keri, could we take part 2 from now that you are going to talk about the nano processor and all the death threats, different type of death threats and implants, and or about that it will be separate. May I say just one thing? I have always a lot of pictures here. I take pictures of videos because the videos disappear. And what I was thinking when you talked about this genocide in, did you say Serbia or?
yes.
And I just it's interesting. I have background. My mother is from also Roman Catholic family, and it's me in this, and some people like brother of my grandfather was killed in 1945, and in my generation now I'm finding out, well, it was the Jesuits that the problems in our family when they took the land and everything, you know, it was them. So we were like, the family was nice people who were working for others, helping others, and they didn't understand that the faith that they are practicing, Roman Catholic, that actually these people, nasty people in Rome, yeah. And here in I believe it was 1621. I am now in Czech Republic. Most of my life I have lived in Sweden, but here it's a case where very famous, like they killed 27 prominent Czech people, like within politics, or I mean, it's 1600, so, but very prominent people for Czech Bohemia. It's Bohemia here. for the Czechs, very important, like wealthy men and nobility, you would say. They picked 28 of them and they murdered 27 of them and show it like their heads were 10 years in the most well-known, put in the most well-known bridge in Prague, Charles Bridge, something like that. But they picked 28. They spared one of them. They would kill him also. They didn't kill him, but the 27. And 27, it's 9 plus 9 plus 9. If you take it, it's 666. 666. And you maybe have heard about the Club 27 when the Illuminati have killed a lot of musicians like from Nirvana. What's his name from Nirvana? Many of who were 27, they kill them, and it's this 27 999 666. And what I remember from Bohemia, these 27 people that they killed, one spared. I show you if you can see it.
Yep.
It's a video from RT, Russian TV.
Oh, Russian TV.
The Armenian tragedy. And listen, it's the same pattern. They picked they picked 19 girls, I believe. The 19th was freed, but they have raped and crucified 18 of them. 18, 6 plus 6 plus 6. 666. This is the year 1915. The Armenian tragedy, they killed the genocide. It was 1.5 million of Armenians that they have murdered. It's the same pattern. This 1621, one saved here, also one saved of them. And this Armenian tragedy, it's in Turkey. What happened after that? Who is the most responsible? Who is the mind? I am thinking about the Black Pope or the Jesuit who has instructed or was maybe friend with Ataturk, who came then in Turkey in power later, and probably is considered by the Turkish people as their father, or but in fact he came probably in power with the help of Jesuits, and this sacrifice was his kind of initiation, or how you would call it. So these genocides and Jesuits, like, it's ongoing for such a long time, and before Jesuits the name for the same people were something else. And they are Luciferians.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And
you're gonna love it when you have Eric Phelps on, because he is a historian par excellence. So yeah, you're gonna love him.
Yeah.
He can speak to a lot of these things in detail. When you go into his home and you see all his books, if you take one book off the shelf, all of them are dog-eared, highlighted, underscored. He reads everything and he remembers it all. So yeah, I think this is going to be a very important thing to talk about with Eric Phelps, is the pattern. Yeah. And for my observation, I've seen the pattern happening to the United States. And so I told Trump, I wrote him a letter and I said, I feel like this is a matter of national security. You need to know about this. And I believe that he's acting upon that knowledge and that intelligence. He's fully aware that the Jesuits are a problem.
You know what, before we take part 2, we have something as simple as 10 commandments, and who cares about, or who listen what means the first commandment, which should be the most important, which is about you shouldn't have another God before me. So which God do you mean? Do you mean the God who is not racist? All people are equal and should like be treated not to kill. And here you have in the center now in Vatican actually people who purposefully are not following even the first most important commandment. So we have to decide, all humanity in the law, if you say God, whom do you mean really? And we are not anymore going to like accept that somebody who is in power in Vatican or in politics who promotes this genocidal, this is Nazism.
Absolutely.
So we are talking about, and it's almost proven that this has been ongoing for hundreds of years and actually thousands of years. So yeah. Before we leave from this part one, would you like to say comment or something that is important?
I love what you're doing, and I think, did you want me to do part 2 this evening, or do you want me to do this on another day, or how did you want it to be arranged?
Well, it's up to you. I have time, but I know that it's close to midnight soon in the United States. Is it maybe better? I don't know when would you have time for part 2 in that case?
I could do it tomorrow night if you have
Oh,
time.
it would be perfect. So shall we take part 2 with all this nano? And in case you have, I know that you have a journal like with a lot of documents. So
Yes.
it document, and even I know that you have shown pictures.
Yes, I have
So
all
what
of this.
I would suggest that I will publish this video today in Europe, today, which is 11th of January 2019, and I would recommend those people who are interested maybe to watch, especially it's the third part of Victorious Libertas video that it's named Military Grade Nano Attack is the part 3 of 4 videos, which is important maybe to watch before we take next part tomorrow. So for me today, but for you tomorrow.
Yes, of course, of course. Well, perfect. And I appreciate everything you're doing, and I love the breakdown because you're making it simple. You're taking deep concepts and these occult secrets, and you're just making it simple, so anyone can recognize it. It's very, very powerful work that you're doing, and I appreciate you having me on here. So tomorrow, if you want, we'll just do the same time. We'll set the same time, and we'll just do part 2, and I'll go as long as you want me to go. And I have all the documents ready, so whatever we need, I have everything with me.
Thank you so much, Keri. I appreciate your work so much, and I know that you have gone through a lot, and 9 or 10 attempts to kill you, or it was certainly many more. And you are so strong and also positive. It's important to give hope.
Absolutely, that's the key right there, because I wouldn't be sharing any of this. I had to wait until I was getting past the hard part, because I didn't want to discuss this until it's we're in a very special time. I believe we're in a time of mercy, and if we as humanity, as mankind, whatever you want to call it, some say in Black's law that there's this word called human, and the human means a monster. I believe that human comes from the word humus. Hu means humus, from the earth. Man means soul. So it means soul that has a body, an earth suit. So we're not monsters, and Black's Law has no right to call us that, and these rotten beings that wrote the law have no right to tell us we can't call ourselves humans. So humanity needs to come together and work together on these issues, and I believe that God's allowed me to live through all this stuff for a reason, because God has his ace card up his sleeve, and he's ready to play it. And so people like you that are persevering through all the trauma and struggle that you've been through, these days are on their way out if people wake up and work together. So that's what it's all about for me, So God bless you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Keri. And we see each other, and we see you tomorrow. And thank you so much.
Excellent. Well, God bless you, Alexandra, and you will be in my prayers, definitely.
Thank you.